We are live now. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate it. So I'm going to call to order the Thursday, April 8th, 2021, Northern Virginia Transportation Authority meeting. Margaret, will you do me a favor and please call the roll?
Absolutely.
Sure, Chair Randall. Chair Randall,
Yep, present.
Councilmember Snyder,
Here.
Chairman McKay, Chair Wheeler,
Here.
Board Member Crystal,
She's going to be late, I think.
Mayor Wilson,
I'm here.
Mayor Davis Younger,
Present.
Mayor Rochelle,
Here.
Mayor Maya, Senator Boyko, sorry,
Here.
Delegate Watts,
Present.
Delegate Rem, Ms. Hines,
Wait, hold on, wait, back up. Miss Rome, Delegate Rome is here. I think I've seen, Danica, are you here?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm here. I was trying to work this new microphone, and apparently it turns off the speakers when I do that.
Okay,
So,
all right. I thought so.
Thank you.
All right.
thank you. So Delegate Rem is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Ms. Hines,
Here.
Mr. Cope,
Here.
Mayor Burke, Ms. Sinha, I believe is representing Peter.
I'm here.
Thanks. Mr. Horsley,
Here.
thank you. Chair Randall, we have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, I'm counting 11 out of 14 voting members. When Chairman McKay, Board Member Crystal, and Mayor Meyer come on, I'm sure they'll let me know, and that would be all the members right now. I'm counting 11 of 14 members there.
Well, Chair Randall, I see Chairman McKay.
I'm here.
I thought I saw him.
Oh, I can hear him.
I am here. Hopefully you can see me too.
I can see you now. There you go. You have to smile. That's it. You have to smile. There he is. So we have 15 members. 15. That's pretty good, actually. We have 12 out of 14.
17.
That's really good. That's pretty good. Well, I mean voting members.
Yeah.
So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to make a motion to adopt a resolution to conduct this meeting electronically as per the governor's order on electronic meetings for continuity of government. Is there a second to that motion?
Seconds.
Seconded by Chairman McKay. Any discussion on the motion? Anyone who does not agree with that motion? Seeing none, that motion will pass 12-02 with Board Member Crystal and Mayor Meyer being absent for right now. The next thing we're going to do, let me go back to my agenda. The minutes of the March 11th meeting. Do I have anyone who'd like to make changes or additions, deletions, or anything to the meeting from March 11th? Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Who was that?
Let's go.
Oh, seconded by Senator Boysko. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, does anyone disagree with that motion? That motion will also pass 12-02. Thank you, authority members. The next thing we have is the economic impact analysis of MBTA funding, and that would be offered by our senior transportation planner if he is on.
Chair Randall, Dr. TheAuthority is on. Shri did receive his PhD during the COVID pandemic, so congratulations to him.
Oh, Shri made his time. So Shri did something worthwhile. All the rest of us gained 15 pounds, and Shri went and got his doctorate degree. So Shri, that is very, very impressive. That's a good use of COVID, Shri. Congratulations.
Well, and he also passed his citizenship exam. So, so he's doing great things.
Okay, yeah.
But I did want to note that the authority, before Shri gets into the presentation, we've joined forces again with Chamorro Economics and Analytics to bring you an updated economic impact study. resulting in looking at the highlighting the taxpayer dollars and how we are utilizing them. Now, again, we already know that one of our primary directives is to invest in projects that provide the greatest level of congestion reduction relative to cost. However, there is a direct impact on the projects that we fund on the economy. So this updated study analyzes economic impacts of $3.3 billion in regional and local funding through the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. The taxes paid by Northern Virginians and the fees received to the NVTA that the authority is responsible for on behalf of the region benefit the entire Commonwealth through increased economic activity, resulting in additional revenues to the Commonwealth, jobs, travel time savings, and additional investments. So now I would turn it over to Dr. Nampathiry, who'll give the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, but seriously, I mean, no, all joking aside, I mean, that's amazing. First of all, congratulations, and congratulations on your citizenship as well. That is just fantastic. We can't wait to see you in person.
Thank you, Chair Randall. Thank you, authority members. Thank you for the opportunity to present here. This is something we have been doing every 2 years. Mr. Longi has presented the previous study we did 2 years back. What we are trying to do through these studies is to determine the economic impact of your investments in VTS investments in this region. And we want to build upon the previous studies. As I mentioned, we did it twice before, and we plan to do it every 2 years, building upon what we have done in the past, adding more components to it. And we also want to have some sort of benchmark so we can compare over the time how we are doing it, how we are doing it for the region and for the Commonwealth. This sort of studies also support 5-year strategic plan goals, where we want to be more transparent. We want to educate our citizens and other stakeholders. We want to use this probably for advocacy, so and so. And we wanted to do this sort of studies with well-recognized techniques and tools. So we want to make sure that if we can stand on this study and it is comparable with similar studies others have been doing. Next slide, please. As Monica mentioned, Shimura Economics and Analytics, a Richmond-based firm, they did this study, and they have been doing these sort of studies for various public agencies and other entities across the state. And they used a tool called Implan Pro, which is again widely used across the nation for economic impact studies. So this, again, we are going back to that repeatable and widely recognized firms studies tools we are using here. And we looked at both 70% funds and 30% funds that have been that you have been allocating from fiscal year 2014 until the recently adopted fiscal year 2020, 2025 6-year program. So it's about 10, 11 years worth of revenue invested in various projects. As you can imagine, part of that is already realized funds, part of that is projected, but we are hoping that we will be spending it as per the approved projects in various projects in the coming years. Next slide, please. So that together, 70% and 30% together so far comes to about 3.3 billion in investments in Northern Virginia. And we are only looking at the impact of this spending on projects, not how the project is being used and what kind of other impacts the project might bring. So Implan Pro, this particular tool looks at 3 different types of impacts: direct, indirect, and induced. Direct is where you have labor hired, so labor charges, wages, salaries, materials, and so on. Indirect is when the firms, the contractors go out, rent equipments, they buy software, they get other services. That's what indirect impact is. And the third one is the induced impact, where the people who are working on these projects get their wages, salaries, and go out to our communities and spend their, for example, retail purchases. So these are the sort of impacts we looked at. This one set of studies the Shimura did. Next slide, please. Without going through all the details and slice how we sliced and diced various aspects and did, here is a summary of all that studies carried out. 3.3 billion of investments. And if you look at the first line on the top side, that is called under the spending, that Northern Virginia, and you go that line to the right under a total, you'll see a number 4.61 billion. That shows that 3.3 billion of investment has had an impact of 4.61 billion in Northern Virginia, 5.11 billion in the entire Commonwealth. That's a cumulative number. So most of it is in Northern Virginia, but the entire Commonwealth is benefiting from this investment. Now to the right, if you look at those bold number ROI, that's return on investment calculated. So a 3.3 billion investment is bringing 155% return on investment to the entire Commonwealth. Now in common man's parlance, Mr. Logie might slap my wrist tomorrow, but to use the common way of understanding this, if I invest $1, I get back that $1, the capital investment, plus I get a 55 cents profit on that investment. That's just $1 spending, getting $1.55 back. I cannot, Michael said that no, you cannot call it profit because this is a public investment and public is benefiting, but that's how we can understand what this means. So for 3.3 billion is bringing in 155% return on economic impact, direct, indirect, and induced impacts. It also generates all these employment in the region, 27,000 in Northern Virginia, 30,000 in entire Commonwealth. One caveat here, note that you have invested in several bus purchases and similar projects, and those buses are not built manufactured in the Commonwealth. Most of them are built somewhere else, Michigan, Ohio, I don't know where else. And those impacts are not added into this analysis. We are only looking at impact within the Commonwealth. So that number, all these numbers could go higher, but we are being conservative and looking at the impact within the Commonwealth only. Next slide, please. Chimura also looked at the fiscal impact, that is basically the tax revenue to local and state governments. And again, this is only using the direct impact or the salaries and wages and things like that, and using an average rate that is standard use. And that shows that for the 3.3 billion investment, Northern Virginia is getting about 4 million in local taxes. Commonwealth is getting about 68 million in taxes. You can figure out that this is mostly the wages and salaries. So what we are looking mostly is the personal and corporate income taxes. So the Commonwealth is getting 68 million plus return on NVTS investments. Next slide, please. This is another way we looked at this. Is NVTS staff did this calculation, not Chimura. But what we did here is, if you remember, one of the criteria for project selection in 6-year program is congestion reduction relative to cost. So when we do model-based analysis, we calculate how much congestion reduction each project is expected to bring to Northern Virginia. So that we can add all that numbers together. Again, we were being very, very conservative here. We looked at the impacts until 2030 only. These projects are going to be there accruing all these benefits beyond that, maybe 2040, maybe even beyond that. I'll give you an example. Richmond Highway BRT is expected to be completed operational by 2029 or 2030. So we are not even calculating the benefit of that project. So being very conservative here, when we calculated, we see about 225 million hours of congestion reduced. That many hours, people do not have to sit on traffic, wait for a bus, wait for a train to come. They can use that time qualitatively or on quality aspects like spending time with their family or other aspects. And we then took a $15 per hour median wage that is specific to Northern Virginia from census And then we looked at other studies where other similar studies where people have calculated value of time impact, and they also use median wage. TPB, Transportation Planning Board, uses median wage for DC region in their model-based analysis. So we are in good place here if we use $15 per hour. We use that, multiplied $15 per hour to 225 million hours. That gives us the value of 3.12 billion in monetized value of time. So that itself, just the value of time impact itself, till 2030 only, brings in 130% return on investments. So the 2.5 billion you invested in regional projects, we get that money back. Not only we get that money back, but we bring more, about 600 million more to the region in terms of value of time within that time frame, within 2030. Next slide, please. Another way to look at this is triggering momentum. So 2.5 billion, again, we are only looking at the regional projects, the 70% funds here, because that's the kind of data we have here available. So 2.5 billion of investment, if you've got the last bullet there, it tells that that is allowing the region to implement 7.1 billion of projects. The NVTS money is allowing the other funds are already available, federal, state, and local. That's about 2.7 billion worth of funding available, but that cannot be spent until you find that additional monies. So the total cost of the project is available for the project to be implemented. So NVTS investment of 2.5 billion is allowing the region to implement projects worth 7.1 billion. That's the impact NVTS investment is having. Next slide, please. Here again, I'm being conservative. I try to add the numbers, but then round it down to make sure I'm not exaggerating or anything here. The economic impact as well as the travel time savings together is giving the 3.3 billion investment from NVTA is giving 250% return on investment for the entire Commonwealth. 250% return on investment. Next slide, please. I'm almost done here. Councilmember Snyder might remember when we presented it last time, he raised the question that that's all great. That's direct impact, jobs creation and all that. That's great. But what about all the other impacts you haven't calculated? There are many impacts of the projects that you need to calculate. We tried to look into that this time round. For example, the first few bullets, safety and benefits, environmental benefits, health benefits, vehicle operating cost savings. Yes, we could look all into that. When we try to get the data to do that sort of analysis, we need to get that separately out of model analysis. We probably need to do a separate model run to get those analysis as of now, which when we looked into it, it will cost at least $20,000 more to do that analysis. So we decided not to do it this time. Another reason why we are excited about this is that we are now just starting the transaction update. As part of that, we will be doing extensive model-based analysis, and we are hoping to extract these type of data through that process, so we don't have to spend extra money on that. In addition, the transaction contract has another component where NVDA staff is going to build in-house capability to do modeling exercises. We will have a model tool with us. NVDA staff will be able to do this sort of analysis in-house. So we will be able to do this next time around 2 years later when we are going to do this, update this study. There are a number of other add-ons we can do. We hope to do it in the next round or the next couple of rounds whenever we are able to put these things together. Various ways to look at how these project impacts are happening in the region. And we will also like to hear from you any ideas, any changes, any additions you would like us to do in these sort of studies. And we can include that in the next round. Next slide, please. I will leave you with this infographics that we created from these numbers. The first line shows job impact, how much jobs are created and what does it mean. Second line shows us travel time savings and what does it mean in terms of return on investments. And the last one, the triggering momentum, how much projects are we able to implement in the region because of NVTS investments. That's all I have, so I will be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, that is amazing. Okay, so authority members, we kind of run the authority as a committee as a whole. We just kind of talk and ask questions, but the meetings have been running long. And I'm trying to shrink those down, and I don't want to put us on a clock, but I will ask as we ask questions and such that we kind of we keep it as we keep it as succinct as possible, remembering that you can always call the staff and ask questions if you choose to. Having said that, does anyone have any questions? That doesn't mean don't talk at all.
Okay, Chairman Randall, I was just going to offer on the next to last slide, Delegate Watts, that you also look at transient occupancy tax, since while this is no longer directly related to the authority, it is part of that whole regional funding mix,
Sure, thank you.
where there's been a lot of pushback on our tapping it.
Yep. Anybody else? Well, Doctor, thank you very much. This was very, very helpful. Really appreciate it. Okay, authority members, we're going to go to the next item. And I just lost my I just lost my agenda. Okay, I can't get my agenda back up. So can you scroll down on this agenda? Because I can't see my agenda anymore. All right, so that's this item. This is the next item. This is the first action item. Is the regional revenue budget. Mayor Rischel, would you like to say anything before?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Sure.
We have before us on the agenda 3 budgets that the Finance Committee is recommending for approval. I would note that the Finance Committee has been working on these since November. Mr. Longi, could you please address each one of the budgets in turn, although we will be voting on each one separately? Mr. Longi, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rochelle. Thank you, Chair Randall. As Mayor Rochelle mentioned, the Finance Committee has been looking at these budgets, providing guidance and direction since November of last year. What we have before us are 3 budgets. We start, as we have in the past, with the Regional Revenue Fund, because that is the principal activity for the authority funding projects. Then we'll go to the 30% distribution, and then finally to the operating budget. They are linked together in certain instances. So there's assumptions in the Regional Revenue Fund budget that it will fund the operating budget, and I'll go through those in turn. Margaret has brought up the attachment, and if you note the note column in the right side of the attachment that you see in front of you, that correlates to the staff report. So 4A, the staff report, addresses this line. And what I'll do is go relatively briefly through this, but I don't want to kill you with details. At the same time, I don't want to try to rush you through what is a big decision for the authority members. The budget starts off with the revenues, as typical. These, remember, are 70% of the total of these classifications that we receive. So we have the sales tax. We have what is now called the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program transfer that used to be referred to as the I-81 money. You'll notice a significant change in that from the difficulty that the Commonwealth had in getting those numbers off the ground to the more recent estimates that we now have. The Grantsworth tax, the Northern Virginia Transportation District Fund transfer, which is $20,000, but at 70%, obviously, is $14,000. The COVA interest is money that the states pay, the Commonwealth pays to the authority while the money, these receipts are processing through their system. The next line down, that large negative, that is how we account for future appropriations. When the authority started doing future appropriations, we spent a lot of time with our auditors because it's not a very typical activity to do. What we wanted to do was use the strength of our balance sheet because we appropriate the full amount of a project with the appropriation. And we know that that project is going to spend out over several years. Therefore, we have a lot of cash that sits on the balance sheet. The traditional way of financing many of these projects would have been to go out and issue debt for them. And had we done that, we would have been incurring a significant amount of debt expense, a total of $194 million just on interest payments over a 20-year cycle to pay for that approach to funding the authority's projects. The $59 million is what we would have to come up with this fiscal year were every project that the authority has funded to date suddenly spend all the money appropriated to it. So while it's a significant number, it does not include a $120 million working capital reserve. So you can tell we're in a very safe position, and presenting these numbers this way is actually part of the disclosure that we worked out with the auditors to make sure that we don't, in effect, get over our skis by forward appropriating too much money. With that, I'll go down to the expenditure component. We have our principal and interest on our debt service payments. We have modeling license and support and the transaction technical services. Those are things that were approved in May when the authority adopted the PAYGO analysis, which was basically when we last updated the revenue estimates. If you remember then, we made some adjustments for COVID, and we still figured out a way to put forward a pretty healthy funding program for the last 2-year update. We will adjust our revenue numbers again next spring. We'll have more information on COVID. It is kind of a heavy lift for your jurisdiction staff to help us with that. And there's really no reason to do it right now. We'll do it ahead of the next funding program where you're making project selection and adoptions. The last line on the expenditure side is the 6-year program PAYGO project funding. And this 33 million represents the projects that are getting appropriated for fiscal 22. There were 2 projects in the 18 to 23 program that requested appropriations, and there are 4 projects from 3 jurisdictions in the 24-25 program that requested a forward appropriation. That total is the 33.3. I'm glad to be able to tell you that every project, whether it was within the 18 to 23 year inaugural 6-year program or that 24-25 program that requested an appropriation, obviously the 2 projects that were in the 18 to 23 program were effectively entitled to it. But I'm also pleased to say that we are able to recommend to you that we can safely forward appropriate those other 4 projects, which in essence brings them to productivity 2 years ahead of what would have happened otherwise. We then get to the transfers and carry forward. We kind of do carry forwards a little differently in this budget because any unspent money in the regional revenue fund, which is mostly comes from revenue coming in higher than anticipated, basically stays in the fund and gets presented back to the authority at the next project funding cycle. So that's where we will redo those revenue estimates in spring of next year and present you revenue numbers that you can assign to projects. The first transfer there, the 2.7, that is the cost of the operating budget for the authority. It is a little bit less than last year. We were very cognizant of the demands COVID is putting on jurisdictions and tried to act accordingly as we put together the operating budget in this. I'll also note that the portfolio interest earnings back up on the revenue side, this is the money that comes in from our management of the balance sheet, actually is about twice that number. So your balance sheet is not only being able to forward appropriate projects pretty much at the level your jurisdictions are asking for, but we're also covering the operating costs of the authority through that portfolio activity. That impressive $142 million negative line is likewise what the part of the calculations that the auditors look for us to go through to, again, make sure on an overall basis we are not forward appropriating too much money. And it's part of that presentation. And I think we are in very safe condition at the appropriation levels we're doing. Our revenues are coming in or have not been as adversely impacted by COVID as we had feared. And again, we'll have that full analysis next spring. The last two lines are that working capital reserve that I mentioned earlier, and that's money that is sitting to kind of help us if anything did go awry. And then the last 5.5 million is the debt service reserve on the outstanding bonds that we have. With that, wraps up my presentation on the Regional Revenue Fund. There is an attachment in your packet that shows the projects that are recommended for appropriation this year. And again, I'll note that everybody who asked for an appropriation for this fiscal year was able to be accommodated, at least in the staff recommendation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Very good. Mayor Rischel, as Chair of Finance, would you like him to go through all three? And then how would you like to do this? And then just do motions on all of them?
That would be fine. What, Madam Chair, will we do separate motions? Is that
We
appropriate?
have to do separate motions, but
Okay.
yeah, we have to do separate motions, but they're fairly connected items. And so you can go through all of them, ask
He can
questions.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
He can keep
ask
rolling.
questions one time through and then do motions separately. Yep.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Lunke, you may continue.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, if we could move to the local distribution fund. And it's just a table in the staff report. This budget is actually so compact, it doesn't even get its own spreadsheet attachment. I think go the opposite direction, Margaret. Thank you.
The attachments are a bit of an eye test.
Yes.
Yeah.
On this budget, again, this is the 30% funds. This is the money your jurisdictions receive monthly. The carry forward is 0 because we took seriously the intent of the General Assembly and certainly the desire of the member jurisdictions that they get all the money they're entitled to each year. So there is no carry forward going from one fiscal year to the next. We then have the sales tax and the revenue sources. This is the 30% side of that. Our current estimate is that that would be $102 million. So that's the revenue level. Expenditures are $102 million. There is a little bit of interest in there, but this money literally stays in the authority's books for days. A week is a long time for this money to be here. We get it out to your jurisdictions absolutely as soon as we can. The assumption section here as well is very important because it basically, we do an annual certification as required in 2313. We've gotten that process. I think it's been running very smoothly. No jurisdiction has ever not been certified. And the wording in the assumption section basically says, if the authority ends up receiving more than $102 million, we're just going to appropriately give the 30% of that excess out without coming back and doing additional budget work. We were able to work that out with the auditors as well because there's just no doubt in this money's going, where this money's going. It's 30% off the top and it's going to your jurisdictions. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. With none, I'll move to the operating budget.
Yep, there you go. Move to the operating budget.
The operating budget, as Margaret is moving to the spreadsheet, is constructed with the staff report. The numbers in the note column, as you see in this attachment, refer on a detailed basis to the staff report. And within the staff report, you'll see we make, I think, pretty transparent everything that's going on with each one of these expenditure lines. I'll kind of recap the discussions that we had with the Finance Committee, noting that we underspent a number of expenditure lines. And as is detailed in the staff report, some of those we actually reduced because we saw an operational opportunity to reduce them. Many of those, much of that underspending, we actually moved forward to the carry forward from the current fiscal year to next fiscal year to cut down on the amount of that transfer coming out of the Regional Revenue Fund. We didn't change many of the expenditure lines because we know we're going to come back to a populated office. We know we're going to come back to meeting together in a more physical sense. And we really don't know how those expenditures are going to line out. I certainly don't think they're going to be any higher, but I think it would have been a little premature to permanently cut some of the base budget lines. We're also talking about relatively small amounts of money. I know Board Member Crystal had noted that we're saving a lot on printing. You know, when we had the authority assembling in person and we would have visitors, we would print 40 to 50 packets. And that was about an inch of paper, even on both sides. You know, we've looked to see what have we learned here that we maybe can move forward in the future fiscal years. We even looked to see if we could buy tablets. And actually having the paper was cheaper than the tablets. Not to mention we don't have the IT staff to support them. But we are looking at those kind of things that work will go into next fiscal year. By and large, the base budget stays still. We do have one improvement that we're asking for. So we have one initiative for fiscal 22. Margaret, if you could roll down a little bit. And that is on the PIM system or the NOVA gateway. We are asking for an additional $130,000 that would be one-time money to continue flushing out that system. The enhancements that we're talking about are predominantly enhancements to the dashboard, and many of those ideas came from the presentation of the dashboard to you. Some of them also are things like adding electronic signatures so that the overall process can be more efficient for the jurisdictions in such that they can submit their expense reimbursements electronically versus mailing us large packets of paper or doing large file transfers. When we think phase 4 is going to be the last phase of this. Phase 1 and 2 were originally planned as 2 separate phases. And then we received feedback from the jurisdictions about how they would like to see some functionality improved, and we've incorporated that. In total, if this is approved, the authority will have committed $400,000 for the NOVA Gateway dashboard. And it is so much more than just the public being able to see the status of projects. It is also a tremendous time saver for the jurisdiction staff in preparing their SPAs and the appendices that go with that, as well as tracking and reporting project tracking, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that $400,000 price is saved multiple times over across the region in your staff time. Plus, it is going to be, and it already is, extremely transparent for the public to be able to see what the authority is doing. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions on the operating budget.
Okay, we'll go to questions right now, and then after questions, Mayor Rischel, as chair of the Finance Committee, I'll go to you to make motions on items 6, 7, and 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So do we have any questions? Wow, hearing none. Michael, you were very efficient. Ms.
Well, thank
Rischel.
you.
Yes, ma'am. Item number 6, I move authority adoption of the proposed FY 2022 Regional Revenue Fund budget as presented in attachment 1.
Motion's made. There a second?
Seconded by Crystal.
Seconded by Ms. Crystal, who has joined us and makes it 13 board members, authority members. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Wait, let's change that. If you're not in favor, please say aye. Hearing none, that motion will pass 13-0-1. And is Mr. Meyer, has he come in yet? Mr. Mayor Myers?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
I'm
well
here.
then- All right, well then that motion will pass 14-0. Thank you. Would you like to make another motion, Mayor Rischel?
Yes, item number 7, I move the authority adoption of the proposed FY 2022 Local Distribution Fund budget as presented below.
Motion's been made. Is there a second on the motion?
Second, happy to second again, unless a member of our finance committee wishes to.
Okay, I would take that second from Board Member Crystal. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. If you're opposed to the motion, please say aye. That motion will pass 14-0. And the next motion, Ms. Rischel.
Item number 8, I move the Finance Committee recommend authority adoption of the proposed FY 2022 operating budget as presented in attachment number 1.
Motion's been
McKay
made. Is there
seconds.
a motion? Seconded by Chairman McKay. Discussion on the motion.
Madam Chairman, just
Mr.
very
McKay,
briefly.
yes. Yes.
I just want to have Mr. Longy have the opportunity just to put on the record again, something that I raised in committee, and that is with the PIMS updates that are in the operating budget, that, it's our understanding that these investments are not an ongoing annual initiative, but when we make this investment this time, we don't anticipate any other major expenses to complete the PIM system in the short term. And if Mr. Longy could just confirm that.
I can, Chairman McKay. This is the last of the build out. The maintenance support for the system on an ongoing basis is part of the base budget. So until we desire another major development, we think that this is it.
Great. Anybody else? I would just say to the Finance Committee, great work. It's a lot of work. And to Mr. Longy, thank you very much for all your work. If you have any opposition to the motion that was made by Mayor Rischel, seconded by Chair McKay, please say aye. Hearing none, that motion will pass 14-0. And we will go to item number 9, approval of the 2027 Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Regional Surface Transportation Program project funding recommendations. Ms. Backman.
Thank you, Chair Randall. So on Friday, January 15th, the authority had the submission deadline for FY 2027 CMAQ and RSTP applications. The authority staff coordinated with jurisdictions and agencies who applied for this cycle of funding, and we developed the attached recommended list of projects, which is option 1, and the proposed funding allocations. I would like to note that we received 33 applications for CMAQ and RSTP funds for fiscal year 2027, totaling just shy of $131 million. The estimated funding available for distribution for FY 2027 is estimated to be $70.7 million, with CMAQ being at $20.4 million and RSTP being $50.2 million. As a reminder, we do program in out years because several years ago, the Commonwealth Transportation Board wanted us to program out years to be consistent with the 6-year improvement program. So that's why you're seeing fiscal year 2027. We did coordinate with the RJAC, the Regional Jurisdiction and Agency Coordination Committee, at the February 25th and March 25th meetings. The 2 funding recommendation options were reviewed by RJAC. And again, option 1 is the one that the RJAC requested that we present to you this evening for action. Option 1 recommends 4 what we call off the top projects totaling $1.8 million. At the request of VDOT, we did have an option 2, which was $5.6 million for off the top projects. The $5.6 million, the difference is the increase in the transportation emissions reductions measures projects that the region funds for our share at the Transportation Planning Board. However, because this is out year money for FY 2027, and the Commonwealth with the work of Ms. Hines, and I do want to credit her for this, they were able to come up with additional funds so that no reductions would have to be made for fiscal years 2022 through 2026. So the Transportation Planning Board does not need additional funding, or we do not need funding for the terms projects at this time at the level of $5.6 million. What we are recommending is that we go back, do some more work, see how the Biden's infrastructure plan rolls out, reassess CMAQ and RSTP, and then we can come back with the proposal next year. It's not, I know some may say it's kicking the can down the road, but the Transportation Planning Board, they do these assignments or programming for the terms projects on an annual basis. So for them, we are current. And I would like to know, we did pull this item from your agenda last month because we did have to do $59.8 million in reductions. When Congress extended the FAST Act, which expired September 30th of last year, they extended it for 1 year. So now it expires September 30th of this year. However, when they extended the FAST Act, they did not account for growth in the CMAQ and RSTP programs. So as a result, we had to go back and work with the localities and agencies to do a reduction of $59.8 million. So what you see in option 1 accounts for those reductions in addition to the recommended programs or projects to be funded with fiscal year 2027. Chair Randall, that concludes my report.
Wow, wow. Okay, thank you, Ms. Backman. I do want everyone to notice how much money Loudoun County is saving everybody compared to every other jurisdiction. Just saying, just want to say that. That's all. Any questions? No questions? All right. Seeing none, I will make this motion. I move the authority recommend to the Commerce Transportation Board funding approval of the proposed projects FY 2027 CMAQ and RSTP funds as presented in the option 1 attachment.
McKay seconds.
Okay, motion made and seconded by Chairman McKay. This other discussion on the motion? Great. Hearing none. Is anyone opposed to this motion? Please say aye. Wonderful. That motion will pass 14-0. The next item on the agenda. Okay, I keep losing my agenda as I go back and forth from screen to screen. Hold up 1 second. The next item on the agenda is item number 10, which is approval of
it's on the
holiday
screen, Chair
revisions to
Randall.
the employee handbook. And this is pretty easy. Yeah, that's a pretty easy one. Mr. Longa, you want to do anything with that?
Chair Randall, I'll just note that when the authority was established, it took pains to make sure that the benefits, which are largely enumerated within the employee handbook, were consistent with the regional benefits. And at that point in time, there were 12.5 holidays. Since then, Columbus Day has been renamed to Indigenous Peoples Day, and many jurisdictions have either added Juneteenth or appear to be queuing it up for their board action. But there are already enough jurisdictions that have adopted Juneteenth that on a region-wide average, there are 13.5 holidays.
So you're saying, so what you're actually saying is the authority would take Juneteenth as a holiday?
Yes, and the recommendation is to take Juneteenth and rename Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples Day.
Wonderful, wonderful. This I'll make the motion, then we can have discussion inside of the motion because it's not very confusing. So I move the authority approve the attached changes to section 4.2 of the MBTA employee handbook.
Second, Delegate Rome.
So seconded by Delegate Rome. Discussion on the motion. I would simply say thank you. I fully support this. I won't give you the speech I gave at our board meeting when we just voted to recognize Juneteenth. if I gave you that speech. It's just sort of a speech that Dr. King might give, so I won't give that speech. But I will say that I really do appreciate the awareness of what Juneteenth is and why this is happening, and the importance of the renaming of Columbus Day. If you do any research on Mr. Columbus, so I'll stop there. And does anyone else have anything they'd like to say? Seeing none, is anyone opposed to this motion? Wonderful. That motion will pass 14-0. Thank you. The next motion or the next item is item number 11. And this is the concessionaire payment for the additional Transform 66 outside the Beltway. And I'm going to go to either Mr. McKay or Mr. Meyer on this motion, and to them to second the motion as well. But before we get there, Ms. Backman, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, Chairman Randall, I just want to note that we did confirm with VDOT that there is enough unprogrammed concessionaire payment funds in the account to accommodate Fairfax County's request. Now, after this request is processed, I will note there are roughly $480,000 left in the account. So I think this will probably be it in regards to being able to put any unprogrammed funds, concessionaire funds on projects, unless we see that projects are coming in under the estimated amount.
Yeah, under the estimated amount, or for whatever reason, the jurisdiction has to give back money. Yep. Yeah. All right. Mr. McKay, would you like to go to a motion?
I would, Madam Chairman. I move the authority recommendation to transfer $2,569,017 in concessionaire funds from Route 29 widening Phase 1 to Route 29 widening Phase 2, and add an additional $10,851,983 from unprogrammed concessionaire funds for the following previously approved projects: Monument Drive Parking Garage, Lee Highway pedestrian improvements, Poplar Tree Road bridge construction, Route 29 widening Phase 2 projects.
Motion's made.
I'll second that.
Motion's made, and Mr. Meyer gave a second to the motion. Any discussion on the motion? No? Okay, with no discussion, does anyone oppose the motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. I'm sorry, all opposed, please make it known. That motion will pass 14-0. All right, we will go to the next item, which is a discussion items. We had a governance and personnel committee update. Ms. Baynard, would you like to give an kind of a quick wrap up of that?
Tracy, you're muted.
Really, how long have we been doing this, honestly? As I was saying, I wanted to come back and provide you a few more details on some activity going on that we discussed during the General Assembly session, particularly a number of studies related to transportation, the climate, electrification, greenhouse gases, which are all issues I know your jurisdictions are taking a look at. We in the authority are going to be taking a look at them as we're doing the transaction update. So there's a lot of synergy going on between what the state's going to be doing, what we're going to be talking about, the opportunity to exchange information, and keeping all of us hopefully in coordination with what we're doing. Next slide, please, Margaret. Also just want to give you all a heads up. The Commonwealth Transportation Board is having a 2-month overview of the 3 existing regional transportation authorities, RTAs for short, because we have to have an acronym. In March, the Attorney General's office provided a pretty cut and dry sort of outlining what the code for each of the authorities, Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, which were the first 2, and then of course, Central Virginia was added in 2020. And this month, the Attorney General's office will come back and provide a summary and update and analysis on financing, project selection, and prioritization activity of the RTAs. Margaret, next slide. And this is just a summary of some of the questions the CTB members asked. I think they have a lot of interest in the RTAs. So as you can see, there's questions about, is there consistency among the SPAs? The issue of their question about, there's new mileage coming in, which creates a maintenance responsibility for the Commonwealth. Should that be something to be concerned about? VDOT is obviously managing a lot of these projects, and the commissioner was asked, can they handle it? And of course, the question is, how is VDOT being compensated for these services? There are questions about what debt and how much debt the RTA is holding. Who's responsible for that debt? And a question that we've all been hearing since the authorities were created and Smart Scale started. Do the RTAs use their funding to buy down the cost of regional projects and therefore making their Smart Scale scores more competitive? These questions and probably some more will be addressed later this month. So I'll keep you all up to date on how those presentations go and other questions that the Commonwealth Transportation Board members may have. Next slide, Margaret. The next few pages just highlight, I think, some of the key studies and the dates that they're going to be due. The first page of this one are really have an impact on specific types of projects or modes that I know are of interest to both the NVTA and its members. Again, the Springfield to Quantico Enhanced Feasibility Study, mostly impacting Prince William and Fairfax in that discussion. The Transit Equity and Modernization Study. Ms. Bachman is part of the stakeholder group at their first meeting last week. And the multi-use trail opportunity, which I know is something all of you talk about, you already have it in your CIPs. There's an opportunity as the state does a needs assessment and creates a prioritization process to maybe find some dedicated funding for that. Next slide, Margaret. And then the next two are just, again, these are some key studies that we should keep track of and know they're going. I think a lot of your local staff are maybe called in or get consulted about this, but just wanted you to know that they're out there. And at one of the attachment, which we don't have to show, list all of them and the dates that they are due. So for your interest, you and your staff can follow them. One other thing that came out of the Governance and Personnel Committee was I referenced a great report and study that CTB got last month on the issue of charging stations, vehicle charging stations, where they are, where they aren't, as a way of the state trying to figure out what to do next. And so I'm going to send that to Margaret, and she'll send it out to all of you to take a look at. If you have an interest in what Virginia's done so far and sort of get a sense of where they are at this point, it's a nice report. It's easy to read, and I think it'll be helpful for you. And Madam Chair, that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Baynard? I will just say one thing that I said in the GPC meeting, and that was when I first came to the authority, I asked about the scoring of projects, and I know that we give the environmental score is just 5% of how we decide the score on projects, and I always thought that was a little low, and Ms. Backman, you can give your answer to that and what we may want to do, what we may be looking to do in the future as far as decreasing the number of criteria that we're using and changing the scoring system.
Thank you, Chair Randall. So as we are in the initial phases of updating transaction, we will reevaluate the performance measures used. I think we had too many for the current transaction. So we were going to go back, vet that through the committees, try to scale down on the number of performance measures and make sure we weight each measure appropriately. And this time, as a reminder, we're also including equity. So we will come to the authority once it's been vetted and once we have vetted through the committees and have recommendations, we will come to the authority to get your approval on the weights of the performance measures.
Okay, wonderful. Anybody else have any questions?
It's Mary.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted everyone to know that the Commonwealth Transportation Board is going to hold its spring meeting on May the 3rd, which is a Monday at 6 o'clock. It will be virtual. It's an opportunity for local jurisdictions to weigh in on smart scale, but also on many other things. And I do think this comparison of the regional authorities is actually, I think, a really important conversation that the CTB is having. Lots of people weren't paying a lot of attention to it, except in the smart scale context. But I do think that there are some significant differences between the authorities. And the one I would call out to this authority, just because I am concerned about it and would appreciate you all tuning in on this a little bit, is at the moment, the Commonwealth Transportation Board does not require that the SPAs from NBTA be approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. We're the only authority where that is true. All the other SPAs are coming through the CTB. And I think that is a flexibility that we actually want to hold on to. But we'll see how this all goes. It's written into law. It would take General Assembly action, which is the other reason I'm saying it here, so that our General Assembly members hear it. But it is of concern to me, as are several of the other policy areas that are sort of coming to light as we dig into and look at how these authorities are the same and are different. So to the extent we're meeting on the 21st, the 20th and the 21st, so there'll be more information in the middle of April here, but our public hearing is May 3rd, as I said, on a Monday evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? I may not be able to see you, so if you do, you may want to speak up. Okay, seeing none? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Miss Boehner. So, Ms. Rischel and Mr. Longi, Ms. Rischel, do you have anything you'd like to say before Mr. Longi goes into the, we already did these pretty much, but Ms. Rischel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance Committee last met on March 18th. Our April meeting is canceled due to no action items on the agenda. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 20th. The work of the Finance Committee was focused primarily on the recommended budgets that were addressed earlier in the meeting. Also, as of note, as a reminder, the Finance Committee is also the Audit Committee for the authority. So the audit status and progress will become part of the Finance Committee's discussions in the coming months. In line with professional audit standards as well as previous practice, our audit partner will have direct communication with me as chair of the Finance Committee. So I would invite you to let me know, any of you to let me know of any specific concerns or issues that you would like to see included in the audit. And I issue a sincere thank you to finance staff for their exceptional work. And also thank you to all members of the Finance Committee for your work on all these items. And Mr. Longi, do you have anything to add?
No, Mayor, I don't have anything to add to the presented reports, but if there are any questions, I can be emailed or contacted by phone.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Wilson, Mayor Wilson, do you have anything from planning and programming?
Very, very briefly, we did meet on the 25th. We continued to review the transportation technology strategic plan and the action plan, discussed how the plan will be used, as well as how it will be incorporated in the transaction update. And we will continue that process in the future. We received a number of other updates, and that was it. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions to Mr. Wilson? All right, and we don't have a report for numbers 15 and 16. So we will drop down to number 17, Ms. Backman.
Chair Randall, I have no report. My report was in the packet, so I'm available for any questions.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Backman based on her report in the package? Okay, for chair's comments tonight, I'm not going to, because I'm just not going to go into another closed session about WMATA. I cannot make myself go into another closed session about WMATA. Just won't do it. But I will state that I believe all of you have seen the letter from Ramada. Is that correct? Or most of you have seen the letter from Ramada? I continue to be disturbed with Ramada's lack of communication, and then, in my opinion, fairly unprofessional communication toward the MBTA. So what I have said, and if anyone disagrees with me, please let me know, is that we can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing the back and forth. We've been doing this for a while. And although they didn't respond to us from a letter sent to them from November, and then when they did respond, they accused us of being late. At this point, we can't keep going back and forth. So what I've said to Ms. Backman is, if we fulfill the invoice, which is what, Ms. Backman, $11 million, correct? I want it done with a letter from us. And I want the letter to say that we expect for this money to be used for capacity increasing and capital and congestion relief, because by code, we have to do it for that. So whether or not they tell us that's what they want to use it for, we need to say that to them as we send the letter with the invoice, the requested invoice amount. I don't think that we can completely not be covered, kind of not cover ourselves when we know what stipulations and restrictions is on MBTA money, and knowing that in the past there has been legal action to make sure that that's the money, that's how we use our money, that a letter that goes to them speaks to the fact that it is our expectation that this money will be used for increasing capacity, that this new money will not be used for an operating budget, and cite the code that says that. And so it's not even, I just need to some degree cover us, so that, once the money's out of our hands, out of our hand, but I need to cover us. And I want to do that in a letter that we send to Ramada at that time. So I wanted thoughts on that. Again, I don't want to go into closed session, but I wanted thoughts on that from anyone who might want to give me thoughts or give us thoughts.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I wholeheartedly endorse that strategy. We do need to put that in writing. I'm as frustrated as you are, frankly, with the back and forth that's gone on for far too long. And at this point, there's too much at risk to not submit, the funding, but there's also way too much at risk for us to not put in writing what we believe the conditions are for the release of that money, for the very reasons that you stated. So I fully endorse that strategy.
Thank you. Ms. Rome, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, while I understand and would certainly vote for what you or how you want to proceed on this, I just want to make a few comments with this. Number one, the letter at best would be described as rude, and that is the most polite way to put it. Number two on this is that we can tell them our position on this, and at the same time, I would not suspect that any different than based on the tone of the letter that they sent over to us, that they're going to basically tell us to go blow smoke. I am wondering what sort of legislative action we may need to take in 2022 in order to basically double down on the mission of the NPTA, which is to deal with capacity issues, because what they may or may not decide to do with that, with the money coming from the NPTA, may not be in compliance with that. But at the same time, I'm also seeing where is going to be the accountability. If we don't have that, how are we trusting WMATA at a time where they've had so many issues as it is to deal with, a number of infrastructure issues, a number of policy issues that they've had to deal with? Who is going to be that oversight to make sure that they are complying with the Code of Virginia in regards to how they use MBTA money, especially more than $11 million? So it was really disconcerting to see that, and I do think they need to at the very least be called out for it.
So I think that's a question for any of the attorneys who might be on the call, because I don't know It may be like, when the county transfers money to the schools, that once it's out of your hand, it's out of your hands. And we might say what we want it to be used for, but I don't know that we can mandate it. And so that's a question for the attorneys on that one.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I would echo Chair McKay as well as your own comments. I think this is an unfortunate situation. It's gone on far too long. I think the suggestion that we clearly reiterate our legal obligations and the legal obligations that go along with the money that we are providing. I think that's a good suggestion and a good path to resolve the situation. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Do we have any of the attorneys who might be able to respond, if there is a response to Ms. Rome's concerns?
Madam Chair, this is Steve McIsaac. I'm certainly happy to weigh in. I know my colleagues are on the line as well, but I think that what the chairman is proposing is a good idea, and we'd be happy to assist in drafting that letter, send a strong message back to WMATA about what they are required to use that money for, and to reiterate our expectation about how it's planned to be spent, and sort of hold them to that. And hopefully that will be enough for them to continue to progress the things that they have been actually progressing, although it's taking longer than had been originally planned.
So I think and I don't want to misstate Ms. Rome, but I'm sure if I did, she would stop me. But I think what her question was is there, besides writing the letter and sending the letter, is there anything we can do to ensure that, maybe not this year, but, and to Ms. Baynard also, maybe this is a discussion about what we need to do with legislation next year.
Madam Chairman, Vivian Watts.
Hey, hi, Ms. Watts. Hi, Ms. Watts.
If I could address that in view of everything that has been said, and having been there with the legislation that created the authority, I would strongly recommend that this letter be crafted in terms of the fact that the MBTA is a creature of the state. They are not dealing with the individual local governments and their autonomy as a local government. And the WMATA needs to understand that, particularly given what they did, what has it been, 3-4 years ago, in the money that was pledged to the 40-year capital maintenance bonding, that they came to the state for that. And in fact, the diversion from NVTA was serious. And they have got to respect that structure that exists in Virginia as the legal governmental structure. And they are tending on this whole thing month after month to deal with us as if we're just localities. Well, MBTA is not a locality. So I would strongly recommend that in drafting this, that the legal tact be taken again, that this is a state creature and must go by state law. And therefore, as the Commonwealth of Virginia, we expect it will be spent as according to code.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Russo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will, of course, support whatever your decision is and whatever your preference is, Madam Chair. I am, however, still disturbed because by not holding them accountable, that is a slap in the face to all the projects that are held accountable, especially because Metro's first fatalities were in 1982, and we are still talking about their maintenance issues today. But I will defer to your preferences, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Rome, do you have your hand back up?
Yes, Madam Chair, I had a question for Delegate Watts, if I could just follow up on what she was saying.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, just ask Delegate Watson that what enforcement mechanisms do you think we actually have within either the existing code or maybe something that if we were to propose something so that we actually could really have that accountability on where that NVTA money is going, so that maybe you, me, and Senator Boyce go offline, or whatever it is, we're going to have to figure out a way for us to actually be able to really put our thumb down instead of just, a letter saying, please do this.
No, one tact, and this letter is not a please letter, it is a letter of our authority. And with that properly crafted letter as a state authority, it would be perfect. I believe that one tact we can take is to involve the Attorney General's office based on what that letter reads and what our alternatives are. And that Attorney General's opinion, which is just an opinion, it's not a ruling, it's not a case ruling from the bench. But with that opinion in hand, it might give us that much additional legal leverage with WMATA. It certainly establishes an appropriate record for WMATA coming to the state again.
Okay, all right. I don't see any more hands up. Well, we will, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Snyder. Was that Mr. Snyder, whose hands I saw go up?
Oh, sure. Madam Chair, would you like some sort of action proposed?
I guess we can, I mean, you mean a motion?
Yeah. Do you want to make a motion that you be authorized to send the letter as discussed, and we second it?
Yeah, and thank you for that. Yeah, I'll make the motion that, that the MBTA will send the letter that I will sign on to, as will Ms. Backman, to reflect what was discussed, and to especially reflect what Delegate Watts said, that the MBTA is a state organization. So that was kind of a messy motion, but you guys get where I'm at.
I'd second it.
Okay, second to that. Is there any more discussion, or is there any discussion on that motion? Thank you, Mr. Snyder, for that. My only discussion is this: what a difference it is to have these 3 General Assembly members versus the past 3 General Assembly members that we had in this MBTA. I mean, it is incredible. So yay. That's my only discussion. All right, all in favor, please say, anyone who opposes, please make it known. Thank you. That
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, because we discussed a lot of things. And so I just want to make sure that I'm following. So what I understand, you described for us at the start of the conversation, a response letter that would let them know we would be paying the invoices, but suggesting or reiterating the obligation that we have to ensure that these dollars be used for projects that will add capacity
per the state code.
Per the state code. And so I think I've also heard in this conversation some additional interest in underscoring for their awareness and the record, the authority's position and how it differs from that of localities. I am very
the authority's position as a state entity, exactly.
Okay.
And yes, exactly.
So I know there was also some discussion of the invocation of the state attorney general, et cetera. I'm a little less supportive of that, although I appreciate the topic being brought up and surfaced. So I am very on board with the letter, including those 2 things, and certainly, as you framed it at the start, putting this behind us.
Madam Chairman, if I may,
yes, Delegate Watts.
It is not uncommon at all to ask for an Attorney General's opinion on such an issue. And we will frame it appropriately depending upon the action. Not uncommon. And again, I was emphasizing what we get back is an opinion. It's usually paid attention to. It's not the same as having a court ruling on it. It's an interpretation of state law on the situation that we ask about.
So then, to Ms. Crystal's question, maybe you can, Ms. Watts, help me. So just how does this work? So we send the letter with all the things we've talked about. If we are going to ask for an attorney general opinion, do we wait for that before a letter is sent, or how does that work?
The way in which I was gaming it out is that you send a letter with the structure that would lend itself towards an attorney general's opinion about what the status is of the authority as far as state law says this. We have to do that. even though we've got a situation, what do we do about WMATA, basically? It's the opinion comes after the letter. The opinion comes after WMATA's response. Hopefully they finally respond. But if they didn't respond, it still could be the opinion is asked as still the next round in this saga, let's say 6 weeks after it is sent. And it can be sent by the authority itself, or it can be sent by any General Assembly member. I can send and ask a request for an opinion, but the request is separately worded. So you don't need to know, don't need to worry what the letter just needs to have the foundation.
Okay, I understand.
It allows that
Crystal,
case to be made.
Madam Chair.
Crystal, did that answer your question?
I think I would strongly recommend and very respectfully recommend that we not reference to WMATA in our effort to put this to bed, that may be a next step. Ms. Watts has forgotten more about this enabling authority than I ever hoped to know. And so I completely defer to her if this may be an appropriate way forward down the line. It seems like one we might want to explore a little further with our attorneys. But for my purposes, I would urge us, and I think that's compatible with what Delegate Watts is saying, to not
Final
reference that
word
in the response to WMATA.
that the Attorney General's opinion just gives you another legal set of eyes on it, a very one of great stature, but it doesn't trigger a lawsuit. It doesn't trigger legal action. It just is part of the dialogue of what we're dealing with.
I do want to, I want to repeat what was just said to make sure we're all on the same page, because I'm not sure that we are yet. So a letter, and it would be a strongly worded letter, but the letter, it wouldn't, first of all, suggest that it should be capacity increase, or it should say it has to be, because that's the Virginia code. We're not asking them, please do that. It is do that. And we will, and we would also reference that the MVTA is a state entity. But from what I'm understanding, Ms. Watts, if something was to go to the Attorney General, that's separate and apart from this letter. Is that correct? Okay. And that's fine. That is fine. Although they have thrown out, lawsuits to us a couple of times, and just in passing. But I get what you're saying, and I understand why. But the letter overall wouldn't, this is not a Mother May I moment for me. It's just not. So, okay, all right.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is Jennifer. One thing we might do is have the legislative members craft sign the letter from the three of us, just asking the opinion. And again, this is a policy thing. It's not. It's a policy question to the Attorney General. It's not setting up a lawsuit. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. But that might be one way that if everybody on the authority doesn't feel as comfortable, it could be Delegate Rome, Delegate Watts, and I put together a letter with the guidance of our attorneys to send for a request for an opinion from the Attorney General.
That's sent in conjunction with the letter we sent, or completely separate and apart from the letter we sent?
It would be instead of the authority sending.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think the authority needs to send the letter.
No, to the Attorney General, not to WMATA.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just suggest, I think these are two separate conversations. I think we need to send our letter and accompany the payment and close out that situation. I think we've been, with all due respect to the Attorney General, we've been well advised by our legal counsel about the best way to approach this situation. I think prospectively, and to Delegate Rome's comments about what legislative remedies in the future might be appropriate, I think an Attorney General's opinion looking at this issue for future legislative action would be a separate process that our legislators could submit, as Senator Boysko noted, on their behalf as part of a legislative initiative. But I think it's really important to separate those two actions. I think Board Member Crystal is absolutely right. Those are two separate actions. Let's get the situation closed out, and then we can have a conversation around a legislative.
That's actually what I was hearing. That's what I was hearing. That's what I was hearing. I don't know if anyone else was hearing it different, but that's what I was hearing, Mayor Wilson.
And And I promise it'll be my very last thing I will say, is that you've also got a political aspect in it. I am not questioning for a moment our legal counsel. We are well served by having the group of you. But we're trying to also subtext, get WMATA's attention.
Yeah, okay, all right.
This is
So
not
then the motion that was made by Chair Randall and seconded by Mr. Snyder, Mayor Snyder, is to send the letter separate and totally apart from whatever may or may not happen down the road with a, okay. So that's the motion on the table. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay.
Randall, just to be clear, that's all we're acting on. So
That's,
if
yeah.
we want, so if, are you going to take a separate action on the Attorney General piece, or are we not going to take action on that? Because I don't think we should be the ones.
No, we
involved in
wouldn't
that.
take
I
action
think-
on that, Mr. Chair.
And so they do that on their own,
yeah,
separate from the
that's
authority's
exactly right, Mr.
official
McKay.
action. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right, everybody good? All right. Anyone opposed to this, please say aye. That will pass 14-0. Thank you. I do not think we have anything else. And so, hour and a half, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.